Hi all, welcome to the next edition of Amnic Cast. Today we have Subhadeep, and let me introduce him. Like I met him about a year and a half back, and then we were chatting about what he is planning to do on IDP, and I was fascinated with like his overall thought process. And few months back we connected, and then he said like it's live. So I thought like it'll be amazing for us to understand what made him actually build this IDP and what all did he had to consider and what is the result of it. Welcome, Subhadeep. Why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
Thank you, Satya. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Subhadeep here from Whatfix. Whatfix is a mid-sized startup, and we are located in Bangalore. I have been working in Whatfix for close to 8 years now. Okay, so this is a startup founded by a couple of my co ex-colleagues, I would say, from the previous company. And yes, that's been my place since last 8 years. And as Satya mentioned, it has been an incredible journey with Whatfix. I met Satya, as he mentioned, a year back when we were thinking about some change in the development platform side, right? Because of many pain points which we have realized over the last few years, right? And yeah, we had a good connect, Satya, back then. I still remember all those coffee chats and all those brainstormings, right? That what we should do as a developer platform, which should help all of our developers. And frankly, why it came so late after 7 years? Why not from beginning? Because all these problems are very typical problem of a growing company, right? And you may not need these kind of platforms at a very initial stage, but yes, now we believe that this is something which really makes sense for us. Thank you.
Thanks, Subhadeep. Like, so just to get through, like, at what point did you figure out that you need this kind of an IDP, and and what actually prompted you saying that, hey, this is what is actually where we are, and this is how we should be, and started like contemplating building an internal developer platform.
Sure, sure. So before I answer that directly, Satya, let me take you through a bit of my journey in Whatfix, right, from day one. This journey is very much contextual with the topic of IDP, right? So the day I joined Wordfix, right, it was a live product by then. Okay, we just came out of our MVP stage, right, and we were targeting to go now full fledged in the market, right, to fight business, to make more features, to make the product better. So as I was one of the very initial engineers, right? So my responsibility was to now start, apart from building features, of course, that was the core responsibility of every engineer, to also look at the scalability. So day one, I joined Whatfix. I went to Whatfix office. I knew how was the state because the co-founders were my friends. So we used to run our production server with one single virtual machine, right? It's like more of a local developer machine which is running. So it used to run in a cloud vendor, okay, but not really something very known vendor, right? So it was in that stage. We used to have our UAT servers in lying in one corner of the office, right? Three desktops we assembled, and we used to run our entire pre-production in that. The journey began from that state, right? So then we started looking into scalability, making it more distributed, introducing more and more tech stacks which can support distributed nature. Uh, then came eventually after 3 4 years, we moved to completely a well-known cloud vendor, right? And then we started realizing that okay, we don't have all good now from the scalability perspective. Now we need probably more security, right? So we implemented a WAF with Cloudflare. We evaluated Akamai, Cloudflare, and many other. So that was one phase, okay. And then next it came to multi-region data centers, right? So now we have a large customer base which are out of US, some are in Europe, some are in Australia, ANZ region, okay. Many of them are in APAC. So the need came that okay, let's expand more. Now, of course, this was all about infra expansion, but we can also imagine that why we needed this much in the expansion, because we have progressed on our journey of product a lot, right?
Yeah.
a lot more features have come, a lot more customers have come, and internally, of course, to do all these things, we had to build a large team, right? So when I joined, it was a engineering team was of size of 3 or 4, right? Okay, along with the CTO. Okay, now we are running at a capacity of almost 180 plus engineers, right? So yeah, I have seen the journey from almost zero to this stage where it's at this scale 1,000 plus employees now, right? Okay, so now what triggered this thought of IDP? Okay, and to be frank, before we started thinking about the problems, right? I was not very much aware of these terminologies, that internal developer platform and all those things, right? What we used to follow is very typical process that, okay, we will have a code repository, people will check in, we will have a build process, somebody will go and build, and then somebody will go and trigger the deployment jobs, right? Okay, so we had a very disjoint pipeline of development, overall software development lifecycle, right? Now, the day it got triggered in my mind that we need to have something. I did not know what was that thing, but we need to have something because uh, when it's about dealing with 50, 60 engineers, right? Okay, and we have to answer. I know to code for sure. That's why you have hired me, right? But I don't know how to build, and I don't know how to deploy. I don't know where my code is getting deployed, how this code is running. When there is a bug, I don't know how to debug in that particular production instance, right? Okay, I'm not able to reproduce this bug in my local system. What can I do? Okay, so these were the questions which were coming in our to us for last 2 3 years. But then, yeah, it triggered me one day that this is not going to scale at all. Okay, we need to have something. And the first question I asked, which an engineer asked me someday, right? That I'm supposed to code, I'm supposed to build features. I should not be bothered about DevOps. I should not be bothered about any of the other things, right? That should be easy for me. Okay, can you make it easy for me? I will. Very good point. Let's think about it because I am also thinking in my head how to make it easy, right? So the thought process was very clear in my mind, which came out of all these 5 6 years of pain point. That night I have to build for someone and I have to deploy for someone, right? Okay,
Mhm.
they're able to code. I have to be there to build and deploy, or someone has to be there. What is the need for that? If someone can code and they have tested their code, it can go to production. Who is why someone is dependent on me or someone else, right? So we start thinking about automation. The next logical step for us was how to automate this, right? Because it's all redundant job. It's just going to a Jenkins, clicking on some button of build, and then waiting for the build, and then eventually run the automation. If everything passed, then again, trigger something, right? So we started looking at different options like Azure DevOps, okay, and few other DevOps things, right? So while we realized that yes, all these things can be automated easily, okay, but our point was, okay, should we do only this much or should we think little bit more, right? Okay, so the thought process what came out is, okay, developers, they have to code, right? So what they don't have to know, let's first figure out those points. So they don't have to know how to probably structure your code, right? That is a company policy and org policy. So everyone who is coding will be coding with the same standard. I don't have to write a document to tell developers that this is how you should code, or I don't have to give a demo or take coaching classes to tell developers. System should tell developers that this is how you should code, and there is no other way to code, right? So that was the first uh, uh, part of the thought process. And the other part was, of course, when all these codes are done and all tested, then let's talk about the other pipeline, right? The CI and the CD pipeline. We had enough options at our hand at that point of time where we evaluated a few vendors, right, who are who had made very good products around this, right? That you can build and you can create your Docker images and you can deploy to Kubernetes. Everything is abstracted. Nothing is required from your side. So yeah, of course, we chose one of the vendors to go ahead with, right? But on the other side, we thought of to also put some effort towards the coding part. Okay, that how we can help developers to structure their code well through a automated system, and how what we can do better. So that was the journey overall. And yeah, here we are today. We have a complete pipeline which mostly includes all of these parts that I talked about.
I still remember how you put it. Like, I don't want the developer to leave out of his IDE, right? And I want him to just check in the code, and everything has to happen. And that was a
That's right.
fascinating thought, right? Like, I just code, and this is what I know, and I put everything that I needed to run, just not in the code as well as on the deployment, and then like that's it. The developer need not know anything about it. Like, it's a
Yeah, yeah.
amazing. So let's come to the
And
next.
that's what, and just to add, Satya, exactly the reason I mentioned, why I mentioned that point, because as a developer for last 15 16 years, right, I believed, and I still believe that an ID is developers heaven, right? Okay, and they should never leave the heaven, stay there. Okay, and that's the best productivity what probably you can get from a developer, right? So, and that's why they are in the system. Yeah, that just wanted to add that point.
Okay. So now, okay, I think why don't you touch upon the part where, like, I think there are enough things on the deployment part of it. Now you had to structure. You touched upon a little bit in terms of the code templates, right? Like today we talk
Mhm.
about Gen AI can code. I think about year and a half back you envisioned how a developer can just come and then he has everything that he can do, right? What did you touch upon? Like, how did you actually envision that, and what did you actually make?
Sure, sure. So let me talk about the why this again the code part came into our mind, right? Okay. So what we realized is a year back or little earlier than that, right? That it's a very practical experience what I had. So the day I realized that when I was reviewing the overall architecture one day, just as part of my regular activity, right? I just figured out that okay, there are almost 15 services, right? And Whatfix backend is mostly a Java shop, and we prefer to build on top of Spring kind of container, right? What I realized eventually is because there is no proper guideline around, yes, we have guideline that how to code, okay, or what kind of coding practices we should have. But we never told any developer that when you're building your Spring services, what version you should stick to, right? Okay, or what Spring Boot version is required. What are the dependencies you should preferably include in your development process. So what I found out is when our infosec was trying to scan the entire code base, right? What we found is there are at least 7 to 8 different versions of Spring Boot which is running across the system, right? The kind of, and when we wanted to run some static code checks on all the code base, right? We found that the code has been done in a very different way. Well, it's all good way. Okay, there is nothing bad or good when you're coding, right? It's just different styles, right? Okay, so we figured out that someone has written how to write a typical Spring controller in a very specific way, what that engineer or that group of engineer may have liked it, right? Okay, and there is some other way to code the same thing. So a lot of well, functionally everything was perfect, but a lot of discrepancy in terms of uniformity, right? So where we figured out that yes, if I look at the specific code, maybe they are all abiding by all the policies, principles, and best practices of Whatfix, but the overall structure is missing that part, right?
Hmm?
So and then we had a few other services which are non-Java services, but still exposing similar kind of APIs, right? So an API is an API. It can be coded in any form or any particular language, right? So there are also a lot of ambiguity in terms of in terms of making it very uniform, making it very disciplined, right? So what I came out with this thought is how to make this entire process, development process, very uniform, where we can build a system where developer will just mention their. I'm just taking one example. Okay. For example, let's say API, right? Okay. A REST API is typically about what is the API path and what is the API behavior, right, in terms of request body or request param or such kind of things, right? Now, this is a pure definition which you can write in a Word document also, right, during your low-level design. And then eventually you go and implement that in your code base. So what we decided that let's take the low-level design or the API definition as a source of truth for our coding also. And we started implementing a code generation engine, right, which will basically look at your definition from any non-technical doc. I mean, still a structured doc, of course, it has to be structured. So we started implementing all our API definition not in the code directly or any other document. Our documentation is all about writing your APIs in a particular JSON format, right, with a very standard open API specification. And our code generation engine today is able to read that particular definition, generate all the right structures, generate the entire project for you with a predefined and pre-approved library version or Spring Boot version, and can generate a service for you. And that service is readily available for you to consume. All you have to do is just write your business logic, what a particular API should do. And after that, you check in your code. As soon as you check in, everything else kicks in. It gets built, it gets tested, automation tested, it gets deployed to production. So if I have to just tell you the story of a developer right now, if I join Whatfix today and I am given a task to write a service with 10 APIs, what I have to do is I have to just create one JSON file, commit to our code repository. Our engine will give you back the entire project structure as per Whatfix's policy and guidelines and InfoSec requirements. And you just it's like filling in the blanks, right? Just fill in the methods and functionalities and just commit. You are ready to go live. So a bit of data, if I can recollect, our onboarding time, which we generally take it as first push to production for a developer, right? That's your onboarding. Okay, that means you are ready for production grade development, right? So it used to be almost like 2 months.
Wow.
And today it is 3 days on an average. That's what we have realized, right? So that kind of flexibility our engine has given, along with all other tools which you have evaluated and purchased or open source implemented, right? So that's the story and that's the vision which we had and all the pain points.
I wanted to touch upon the deployment aspect also, right? Like how many pods do you run? What is the memory? All those kind of
Sure.
stuff. Is that also something that you put in the code, like in the Git itself?
Exactly. Now, talking a bit more about the architecture of any project, as I told, I was talking about a specific portion of the architecture, which is all about your service definition, right? So this is what defines your service, APIs. Of course, we have many other parameters. It can be your events, it can be any other thing. A lot of definition can be done in that definition file. Talking about the deployment part. Now, just to compare what used to happen earlier, that any developer creates one service, right? Now I have to go and raise a ticket that please deploy this service, assign 5 VMs for this, and then you give 4 GB RAM and 2 core of CPU, right? So now after someone gets that ticket, our DevOps engineers, right, we'll be running some kind of automation, Terraform or any other kind of automation, right, to create that. So which will take certain amount of time because it's not happening automated way. If I get the ticket today, then my DevOps engineer will look at tomorrow, and then probably I'll get the entire environment ready by day after tomorrow, right? So it's a 48 hours gap, which we used to see. Now it's all up to the developer. So there is one more section in this entire design of IDP. What we have is called deployment definition, right? So you are saying that this is what I want. I want to run 5 different pods or 5 number of instances for my service with so and so configuration, right? How much disk you want, how much. So it's typically you can relate to a typical pod configuration, right? In Kubernetes, what we have. But main point is it's in control of a developer itself, right? I don't have to go and depend on someone else to define these parameters for me and deploy for me. So again, as soon as I commit my changes on the deployment side. So the entire pipeline understand those changes as well, and then it can deploy. Of course, we have always built, we have always thought about that. Okay, this can be misused as well, right? So some developer, knowingly or unknowingly, right, can limit their pods to 100, and then it will burst our cost, right? So there are some checks and balances, of course, that these are the limits what you can have. If anything beyond that you are committing, then an automated trigger will go to the engineering lead, and they have to approve these changes, right? So there are some checks and balances, but this is the entire pipeline that both deployment and your coding structure, right, is managed by two definition files, and that's all what a developer has to know.
Amazing. And one of the biggest uh, thing to actually take IDP is to really roll it out, right? Because now I'm used to certain way. Like you told that each developer, each team had his own way of doing it, right?
Mhm,
Now
mhm,
convincing all of them to say that, hey, now this is the way. You don't directly code, you write in a file and then move it, right?
mhm.
How did you, what did you do to convince people? Because adoption of an IDP is a challenge, right? And what made them start using this one?
Sure. So, Satya, we took a very different approach, and I would also like to tell the thought process behind taking the approach, right? So, as Whatfix, or as you are, heading Amnic, right? Okay, when we want to go and convince our customers, okay, that please take our product. So customers will ask back the question, right? What is there in your product that somebody else
Mhm.
doesn't have? Or by using your product, right? What I can get, okay, that somebody else cannot give me, right? These are the typical questions. So basically, the point what I'm trying to make here is that if you have to, if you have to, roll out something, or so I would not say we rolled out this platform. I would say we sold this platform, right? Okay. So the difference here is very simple. That from day one, the team which is working, the core team which is working on building this platform, right? We made sure that we're aligned, that the developers are not our colleagues; they are our customers, right?
Mm.
Okay. So if you have that thought process in your mind that they are our customers, right? And I know that customers are having some pain point, right? That they have to depend on someone else to build, they have to depend. So if you can sell these USPs of any platform, anything, right? Okay. So I believe that it's much more easier and smoother to penetrate the entire org, right? Of course, it could have been a top-down approach. I
Mm.
could have gone and told the entire engineering, okay, everyone, this is the new system. You have to move to the system, right? Well, that's another approach which works, of course, but it's more like a top-down approach. But we wanted to have a very strong conviction in our team why you should adopt, right? That's why
Mm.
we never stopped supporting the old stack, right? We said that, see, we have two stacks. One is this way, one is that way. It's up to you. We are not forcing you at all to move to this. But if you use this, you will get this much benefit. Of course, the challenge was there that with anything new, you have a learning curve.
Yep.
More than learning curve, you are in a habit for last 7 years, right? It's very hard to change that habit. So it's all about changing the mindset, right? But that's what also, I mean, as a vendor, when we are acting as a vendor to our other developers and customers, right? Okay, we have to convince them by giving them weekly newsletters. We used to send weekly newsletters. This is what the team has done, and this is the new features which we have bought, right? So initially, I won't say there was friction, but there were. We took a few months of time. I believe it was around 7 months till we rolled out completely into this system, because 7 months, almost 15 to 16 services moved to different services, moved to this structure, right? Of course, I won't blame, or I won't say that it could have been done faster and why it was not fun, because everyone had their own priority of
Yep.
supporting other customers, right? So we gave
Yep.
time, but we always we did not enforce, but we always try to sell the better product to them, which they finally bought in, okay, and now they see the benefit, right? So that was the one I believe that was the one single point that if you can treat your developers as your customers, as a core infra or DevOps team, then it's easy to roll out. So bottom-up approach is always best if you can make it. If you can't make it, you always have a top-down push.
Nice. And once you roll out, what kind of results did you see in the new platform?
Okay, so can you just, if you're asking for any specific points here, Satya, or overall?
No, so for example, like in terms of like how many deployments did you do before? Like how did it change, right? So that like you
Sure, sure.
also supporting two stacks. Why would I choose, right? Obviously, results have to prove for itself, right?
Exactly, exactly. So as I told you earlier, also the one data what we collected is that time to go live for any developer came down to 3 days from 2 months almost, right? Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
Uh, so that's the average data. Okay, maybe it's not exactly that much difference in terms of build and deployment pipeline, but mostly the delay was not because the earlier system was very complex. It was mostly because of the dependencies, right? Okay,
Yeah.
so the
Yeah.
dependency is something which kills you sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you, when you're depending on someone else and someone else has some other priority, you have to honor that and you have to wait. So that is one improvement what we have seen. And in terms of deployment, right now what this has really given us as an ROI, right, apart from all other things what we talked, is the ability to also support our real the Whatfix customers, right? So because of the earlier system, we used to have a release cycle of a sprint cycle of typically 2 weeks, very standard in industry, right? So which means that everyone is waiting for that release train, okay? That whenever it comes, I will join that train and then I will deploy, okay? And we had to choose that because we had a we never had a very large DevOps team, so it is impossible for our DevOps team to support each and every service owner or teams to go through that manual process of building and deploying every day or every 2 days, right? That's why we chose to go for a very structured sprint planning, right? While we still have the sprint way of developing things, but we always say that you don't have to wait till the sprint end to deploy your changes, right? Because now you can change anytime whenever you're ready, okay?
Yeah.
After all your testing and everything is done. So what data we have seen, Satya, is roughly, as I told, that we used to have all the releases. So typically one release per service in 2 weeks because there was no other option, right?
Mm, mm.
Today we have seen the team who are very aggressive and very fast running, right? Due to what the nature of the business, they are able to do at least, I mean, on an average, 2 deployments per day on a very I would say exciting day, right? Or at least 2 to 3 times in a week when things are going a little bit more relaxed, right? And of course there is no dependency anymore on any team, so you are okay to you can do a release once in a month, up to you. I don't care because you are the owner of the service, so it's up to you. But if you are able to do 2 days or 2 releases or 3 releases in a day, you are welcome. We have the platform ready for you. So that kind of data we have seen. So quite a positive data change in
Nice.
the
Very good.
change in the
Very,
deployment.
very good. And what? How does the future? What are you planning for the future? Like I was talking to others in the IDP world. Like people are integrating Gen AI. Your code generation is already done. Like what are the other
Right.
aspects that you are working on into
Sure.
improving this IDP to the next level?
Sure, sure. So our goal has always been to improve developer productivity through this platform, right? So now we have reached a stage where there is no loss of productivity due to for all these typical DevOps chores, right? I mean, as in all this build pipeline, deployment pipeline, right? Now, and all we want to focus for a developer is that you code and you check it, right? So now we are targeting this particular piece, Satya, right? The coding part. Our belief was that okay, assuming that code is everything is fine, now we have solved the problem of entire the deployment pipeline, right? Now we are checking that how we can make the code better by our developer platform, right? So we are integrated systems like Copilot and ChatGPT, right? Okay, into the system, which everyone is doing, all good. Okay, but what we want to do little more in this field is okay, Copilot is helping you, of course, that is fine, but it cannot help you to fully design or do everything, right? It can do probably a bits and pieces for your code. So now, as part of this platform, we are also started tracking the developers' activity in terms of when they're checking in their code. We don't want to track that how much check-in they're doing or how many numbers of PRs they're raising. That's just one metric to track, but not a very important metric for us. What we are right now focusing at, that can we give some feedback through this platform to the developer that, okay, you have checked in the code, right? And I'm ready to build. But is there a improvement required? So usually what happens is once you check in the code, then you send it to for a reviewer to review, right? Okay, and the reviewer will once the PR is reviewed and approved, it goes to the pipeline, right? What we're trying to also analyze is can we build a AI reviewer, right, which can typically point out all the basic issues in the code, right? Okay, because many times what I have seen personally, that people developers have sent me code where the basic hygiene is not maintained, right? A field, I mean, of course, those can be used by many tools of static checks and all. The basic hygiene is not maintained, basic structure is not maintained, basic oops concepts are not well done, right? Okay,
Mhm.
this is something we are trying to evaluate with this kind of Copilot and other GenAI tools. Okay, that as soon as you check in the code, can my system automatically tell you that these are the few basic problems you should fix before it reaches your human developer, right? A human reviewer, sorry.
Reviewer.
Okay, so this is something which, and also we are trying to encourage people that we are trying to gamify this a bit as well, right? That the better code you write, and in terms of this GenAI system, right, you'll get some leaderboard points, and we display that this week, and this is the developer who got the best point for good coding, right?
Nice, nice.
So these are, I mean, there are many. I'm just trying to explain one or two, right? So that's what we are trying to do.
Awesome. I think we have come to almost the end of this one. Anything that we still need to touch upon?
Uh, I don't have. I mean, I have many other topics to talk about, but for the interest of time, I can just uh, tell you a few pointers. What we are trying to also do is we also want to and Satya, that I'm working with you right now. That one more point, one more area. What we are trying to focus is cost, right?
Mm.
Okay, where we believe the cost, where we know that cost is a very important metric for any organization to track. Okay, so when it comes to cost for us engineering teams, right, it's all about infra and development cost, right? So this platform, now a question can come, how a cost is directly related to a developer, right? So we want to give the visibility to each, while we still have enough tools which can give you your cloud cost, your Kubernetes cost, and everything, right? Okay, but that's a good data for probably the engineering head or CIO or CTO to make some decisions that next year or next few years this will be the budget for the engineering, right? But the sense of the data ends there as of now in the current form, right? What we want to also push down to developers is this cost factor, okay? And for that, we are trying to build a system, and you're also part of the journey in some way, that if we can give enough visibility to a particular team that you are burning this much cost, right,
Yeah.
to support these number of APIs and these many features, right? So there has to be we believe that there will be a eye opener for that. That maybe I'm just doing this much business, or I'm supporting only this much traffic, but my cost is so high. Why?
Yeah.
Because I have done a bad code somewhere, right? Because of which I need more CPU and more RAM. What can I optimize? So this is one part which we're actively looking at, to 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 push the developer to optimize their design and their code from a cost perspective, right? That's one more area which we're working on right now in this particular platform.
Awesome. So it's a pleasure actually talking to you, discussing with you. We also learn quite a lot of stuff. brainstorming with you, right? Thanks for taking
Thank you
time.
for having me, and yeah, very nice chatting on this topic. It's very close to my heart, this topic, because this is something was built in house with a lot of passion and a lot of it gives me immense pleasure, because after building this I can look back and see that how much pain I had, or few of my team members had in last 6 7 years. At least that pain is gone from the current team, right? So that gives me very happy. It's a direct ROI from me, that technology can help people directly. Yes,
Awesome.
it's true.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks, Subhadeep. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.